The unbelievable trial that reveals your true purpose in life. Few knew what truly happened that night in Jerusalem. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the cobbled streets. Shadows danced as hushed whispers rippled through the crowd. A chill raced down spines. Something monumental was brewing, and it had everyone on edge. In that dusty court, illuminated by flickering torches, an arrest was made. The accused stood silent, his eyes piercing like daggers. He was no ordinary man, he was Jesus of Nazareth. Perhaps a prophet, perhaps a madman. But what no one could foresee was the surreal twist that awaited them. 1000, those were the words thrown about. Would Barabbas, a notorious criminal, be spared from execution in exchange for this enigmatic figure? A dark irony hung in the air. How could the crowd, a living embodiment of conflict, condemn the innocent and rally behind a thief? Gasps erupted, a collective confusion clouded reason. As tensions rose, a powerful rumble echoed. An unnatural storm gathered overhead. The sky darkened. Thunder grumbled ominously. It was said to be a sign, but a sign of what? What force was at play here, leaving hearts racing and fear sizzling in the air? Suddenly, the high priest's voice rang out, cutting through the buzz. Do you wish for this man to be crucified? The question clawed into the hearts of the onlookers, slicing through the deceitful veil of safety. Would they choose freedom for a murderer or innocence for a healer? Each answer fanned the flames of uncertainty. What was it that twisted their judgment? The lure of conformity? The weight of expectation? As stones rattled in the palms of those who witnessed the trial, a wave of regret washed over some. Others stood firm, fists clenched, as their faces mirrored the chaos within. Then, as if orchestrated by an unseen hand, a cry entered the air, a desperate plea mixed with humility. Would anyone stand up for him? Moments stretched as heads turned. Hearts palpitated. And in that heavy silence, the question lingered, what was the true purpose behind this trial? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air thickened, heavy with anticipation as the crowd's murmur began to wane, shifting into an almost palpable silence. The weight of the moment pressed down on all as if time itself had drawn its breath. In this charged atmosphere, the participants became mere vessels for a narrative larger than themselves. The high priest's piercing gaze lingered over the faces before him, searching for dissent, for compassion that might rise against the tide of fervent cries for condemnation. Did they not see the man who stood before them? The one who had moved among them, healing the sick and proclaiming liberation from bondage and despair. Yet, here he was, face to face with their wills and desires. The irony of the affair cut more deeply than any sword. Betrayal, a voice called out from the back. It was one of the disciples, grappling with disbelief as he pushed his way forward. This man is no criminal. He is righteous and good. But his voice fell like a stone, bouncing off the walls of judgment that surrounded them. In stark contrast to the accusing croaks of the mob, additional murmurs arose, whispers revealing doubt and vulnerability. Were they to sacrifice their own liberation for fear? Could they not see the sacred moment, where compassion could bridge their fears? As the chaos swirled, the winds outside began to howl, a reminder of nature's own fury intertwined with human hearts. A flicker of lightning illuminated the scene, casting eerie shadows of doubt and conviction. What unseen power raged outside, and what did it signify? Did they not feel the trembling earth? Or was it simply the weight of their decision that stirred such unrest? In that moment of turmoil, a woman from the crowd stepped forth, her heart pounding in her chest. How shall we weigh our souls in this balance, she cried, her voice trembling but steadfast. What shall become of us if we choose to save a thief over the true servant of God? Her words echoed, lingering in the air, unsettling the crowd further. She held the gaze of many, though the weight of their choices clouded the recognition of their shared humanity. Yet, in that shared moment, could they not sense the spiritual void that lay heavy upon their hearts? Then the remnants of an ancient prophecy stirred in the hearts of the witnesses, whispering of a reckoning. This was not just a trial of an individual, it was a trial of the spirit within each person present. What should they cultivate within them, love or fear? Freedom or servitude? What seeds were they planting in the fertile grounds of their faith? And as the tension mounted, another voice rang out, a governor's hushed command ordering calm. But would calm restore what had been lost? Beneath the surface of this trial lay the true conflict of the soul, wrestling with doubt, grappling with conviction, and yearning for purpose in a world beset by contradictions. In the quiet that followed, questions loomed like the darkness overhead. What would it take for them to recognize the profound truth standing before them? And, amidst the storm both internal and external, would they ever uncover the ultimate purpose hidden within this soul-crushing trial? As the murmurs of the crowd settled into an uneasy hush, a stillness swept through the chambers, as if all creation paused to bear witness to the impending declaration. The high priest, sensing the weight of expectation, enveloped the moment in solemnity. The flickering torches cast long shadows, dancing eerily on the stone walls, and there stood the accused, unyielding in the face of impending fate. Let it be known, the high priest declared, his voice steady yet layered with tension, betrayal we have witnessed, and the consequences shall not escape the judgment of this court. He paused, allowing his words to sink into the hearts of the people, as if the air itself held its breath alongside them. But tell us, citizens of Jerusalem, what must be done with this man who has walked among us as both prophet and blasphemer? The cries rose instinctively, oscillating between cries for justice and shouts of indignation. Release Barabbas! Echoed through the throng, as if their collective voice sought to drown out the unsettling truths that flickered in and out like the flames before them. But amidst the fervor, doubt lingered like a shadow. For some, the call for mercy wavered against the backdrop of fear of reprisal and of confronting the uncomfortable truths within their own hearts. Then, in a moment that seemed to draw from the fabric of fate, a voice rose above the clamor, one suffused with desperation. It was an elderly man, his face weathered and wise, whose presence commanded respect. Is freedom worth its price? He posed, his gaze sweeping thoughtfully over the throng. What is liberation if it shackles our souls with hatred? The crowd stilled slightly, caught between the urgency of the moment and the larger questions simmering beneath their consciousness. Whispers were exchanged as they turned to listen to the echoes of their own beliefs reflected back at them. Could it be that the choice before them was not simply of one life over another, but a deeper reckoning of their own values? In the stillness, the sky outside rumbled once more, as if in conversation with the human turmoil below. A bolt of lightning illuminated a fleeting vision of peace, perhaps, a reminder of what could be if love were chosen over fear. The air crackled with an electric tension, blending both the internal and external chaos. What wisdom might be gleaned from the storm, a symbol of transformation through turmoil? As hearts wrestled with uncertainty and the weight of expectation, sudden memories surged forth, remnants of all the moments of healing, forgiveness, and hope that had unfolded in their midst, triggered to the forefront of their minds by the very presence of the man on trial. Did they not recognize that within him lay the potential to unveil their own capacity for compassion? The tension crackled and stirred, and yet, amidst the burgeoning answers, more questions arose, each revealing a layer of complexity. How often had they turned their backs on love in pursuit of societal approval? How could their choices redefine not just the fate of one person, but their collective destiny? And finally, through the tumult of thoughts, a solitary question emerged, ricocheting through the silence that followed: if confronted with the truth of their own choices, could they summon the courage to embrace a path of compassion, even when the storm around them threatened to drown out the voice of grace? As the crowd swayed like a field of grain in the wind, still grappling with the weight of the elder's words, something remarkable occurred. The high priest, caught in the tension of duty and desire for peace, suddenly paused. His eyes widened slightly, as if a flicker of understanding had taken root deep within him. The flames of the torches flickered with renewed fervor, accentuating the nuances in the faces around him. There was something divine in this chaotic momenta recognition that transcended the roles they played, citizen of Jerusalem. He called out, and the crowd's murmurs softened under the authority of his voice. Have we not lived alongside this man, this teacher? Have we not watched him heal our sick and teach us to love our neighbor as ourselves? Should we allow fear to dictate our judgment? His questions hung heavy in the air, uncharacteristically vulnerable. A young woman stepped forward from the throng, clutching her child, whose eyes were wide with confusion. But what if our devotion to law blinds us from the heart of the law? What if we are blinded by our own fears of what is different or new? Her voice trembled yet bore a strength born of desperate yearning for truth. If he has come to show us a new way, must we cling to the chains of the past? The high priest's brow furrowed as he absorbed her words. Around him, the crowd shifted uneasily, grappling with these inquiries that struck at the core of their belief. Here was not just a trial of one man, but a fervent interrogation of everything they held sacred. The heart of their faith, steeped in tradition and ritual, was under scrutiny. Was their adherence to the past preventing them from embracing the transformative love exhibited before them? As clear skies faded into unpredictable storms overhead, the high priest implored, could it be that we have mistaken the meaning of sacrifice? That true sacrifice is not the punishment of another, but rather the courage to embrace the painful path of love. His gaze swept across the multitude, seeking eyes willing to ponder the implications of his challenge. In a corner of the assembly, a group of the learned men gathered, their expressions a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Are we not the guardians of our faith? One pondered aloud. Shall we allow the voices of uncertainty and doubt to shape our teachings? Yet even as he spoke, a light flickered within, urging him to consider the grace of humility, the weight of compassion. The storm continued to rumble, and with each crash of thunder, it seemed the divine was seeking to break into human consciousness. The crowd remained restless, torn between loyalty to their customs and the call to embrace a more profound understanding of love. As they wrestled with their own beliefs, they found themselves questioning, what if the true rebellious act was not to follow the law, but to allow love to redefine their understanding of right and wrong? Amidst the shifting tides of conviction, a collective breath stilled. The air hummed with the promise of revelation. The stories of their ancestors echoed in their minds. There were times when knowing the rules was not enough, and wisdom rose through acts of unexpected kindness, moments that drew from the well of their shared humanity. And then, the high priest's voice trembled slightly as he spoke anew, is there not a sacrament in our willingness to change? To bend towards grace rather than dogma? The crowd felt the weight of the question and its significance. Perhaps it was not only the accused who was on trial, perhaps they were all wrestling with the urgency of their own redemption. In this crucible of turmoil and revelation, one thought stirred a realization that the path forward beckoned fiercely, demanding courage to surrender to something greater than themselves. How could they let go of their fears, their certainties, and step into the embrace of love, particularly when it flouted the security of their understanding? As the electric tension in the air swelled, a question loomed larger than the storm: if each of us faced the weight of our own choices and embraced the transformative lesson of love, what might that demand of our hearts? As the tempest swirled around them, the flickering torches illuminated faces contorted with turmoil, doubt, hope, and yearning. The weight of the high priest's words settled deep into their hearts, echoing in silence while the rains began to fall softly, almost as if the heavens themselves wept for the fragile state of humanity below. The young woman, still clutching her child, gazed up at the high priest, her voice steady now. If we are indeed called to love, how do we reconcile that with the laws we have held sacred? Her question was pressed against the fabric of tradition like a seam ready to burst. Is love to be our compass, even when it contradicts what we have known? Or must we choose one over the other? The high priest, caught in the web of her inquiry, felt a tug within his soul. Ah, love, he murmured, his mind racing to decipher its depths. Is it not the very foundation upon which our laws were built? Yet, here we find ourselves lost in interpretation, too often choosing to wield it as a weapon rather than a bomb. Just then, out of the shadows leaned an elder, his voice gravelly with experience. I have seen times when our laws guarded us and times when they bound us. There was a man who broke bread with the outcasts, whispered forgiveness to those deemed unworthy. He lived as a lighthouse through turbulent storms and showed us that divine presence often dwells in the least expected places. The crowd stirred at the elder's testimony, curiosity igniting conversations. Must we not embody the very principles we profess? Is it enough to merely recite the laws, or must they live through us? Another voice questioned, rising steadily from the throng. To truly manifest the spirit of love, perhaps we must risk being vulnerable. When have we allowed ourselves to be carried by grace? The rain began to fall more heavily now, drumming rhythmically against the ground as if in agreement. The crowd's tension transformed into a raw energy, each individual wrestling with their reflections in the mirror of this moment. They were faced with a choice, a call to action not just for the teacher standing trial, but for their own hearts as well. Suddenly, a young man, emboldened by the outpouring, proclaimed, "Perhaps the one on trial is not merely this teacher, but our very spirits, our willingness to change, to love." Could we bear witness to love's demands without allowing our hearts to harden in judgment? His words burst forth, stirring a wave of emotional acknowledgement. Above them, the sky darkened further, reminiscent of the struggle occurring within. The storm, seemingly a reflection of their inner turmoil, thundered ominously as if trying to convey a truth that transcended their understanding. In that chaos, the high priest felt the stirring of a deeper realization. If all of creation longs for reconciliation towards love, should we not join in the cry for compassion over condemnation? His gaze swept the crowd, seeking connection in myriad faces that mirrored his own uncertainty. Wisdom, it seemed, was not reserved for the learned, it breathed life into the questioner and beggar alike. The heart cried out for something more, something genuine and fearless. Attention danced in the air, alive with theological possibilities and existential reckoning. The high priest pondered, what if we allowed love to redefine our perceptions and transformed our nearly rigid understandings of justice? How might we walk together, side by side, toward a horizon illuminated not by fear but by hope? The rain turned to a delicate drizzle, wrapping the assembly in a muted embrace, urging reflection. Each soul present now held a mirror to their beliefs and a confrontation with truth that demanded introspection, and as the murmurs of contemplation wove through the crowd, another question emerged, resonating louder than the storm. In a world that often measures worth in adherence to laws, how might we find courage in love, seeking not only to uphold our beliefs but to uplift all of humanity? The rain slowed to a gentle mist, and with it came a profound stillness among the gathered souls. Each heart was now a vessel, open and brimming with the weight of contemplation. The high priest stood tall, feeling the pulse of the moment urging him to delve deeper into the well of wisdom that lay before them. Love asks us for more than mere observation, he said, his voice steady, cutting through the lingering mist. It calls upon us to act, to embody the very essence of what we seek. Are we ready, my friends, to allow our hearts to be instruments of healing? A ripple of murmur spread through the assembly as they pondered his proposal. Some nodded, while others wore expressions of discomfort, as if they could feel the challenges love might demand of them. Would it mean relinquishing the fears that had kept them safe? Would it ask them to reach beyond their familiar shores into uncertain waters? The young woman who had first spoken, still cradling her child, found her voice again, trembling yet firm. What does love look like in action? How do we embody it without losing ourselves in the process? The elder, who had spoken of the man who welcomed the outcast, raised his hand, the wrinkles on his face betraying years of wisdom. Love is not merely a feeling, it is a way of being. It is the moment you choose to sit beside the lonely, the act of listening to another's pain as if it were your own, the courage to forgive, even when it seems impossible. The crowd listened intently as the elder continued. I remember a day in my youth when a stranger, worn by hardship, sought refuge beneath a tree in our village. Rather than turning him away, we shared our bread and allowed his story to mingle with ours. That day, love broke down the walls we had built, it transformed us from mere individuals into a community. We learned that in opening our hearts, we grew far richer than any law could ever measure. A solemn murmur rose as his words resonated with many who had faced their own storms, the crippling isolation of grief, the joy found in shared laughter, the vulnerability of truth unspoken. The high priest sensed the shift, the storm within seemed to be quelled by the unveiling of shared humanity. What if, he suggested gently, the laws we cling to are not the foundation, but the scaffolding that helps us reach the true structure of love? Might we find the courage to strip away the unnecessary, to allow room for grace in our judgments? The rain began its descent once more, this time less as a barrier and more like a blessing, washing away the dust of fear from their spirits. The faces around him were illuminated not only by the flickering torches but also by an incandescent glow of possibility. The high priest could see that fear, doubt, and hope were entangled in their hearts, inviting them to a deeper engagement with the love that could bind them together, yet, a lingering tension remained, for with the beauty of love also came the fear of its demands. Can we forsake the familiar for something unknown? One voice echoed from the shadows, laden with dread. What if my love isn't enough? What if it exposes me to pain? Pain is indeed a part of love, the elder replied softly, his eyes filled with compassion. But so is joy, understanding, and revelation. In love, there is risk, and it is in that risk where we find our true purpose. Each act of love holds the potential for hope and transformation not only for ourselves but for the world around us. The high priest felt the weight of his own convictions pressing down. What does it mean to love in a way that transcends our limitations? How do we invite one another into a place where unconditional love reigns, even in the face of condemnation? A hush fell over the crowd as they grappled with this new horizon, the storm outside mirroring the tumult within their hearts. Each individual began to realize that their collective journey toward love was as significant as the individual actions that made it up. With the mist swirling around them, they stood on the precipice of revelation, staring into the depths of love's demands. Questions rose, unspoken yet palpable. Are we ready to reshape our lives not just in adherence to old laws, but by embracing a new standard, a living compass directed by love itself? As the gentle rain draped its veil over the gathering, an undeniable stillness filled the air, akin to a sacred pause before the unfolding of great mysteries. Within this space, both introspective and vulnerable, the high priest sensed the gravity of the moment. He could see the flickering torchlight cast dancing shadows upon the faces of those who had come seeking answers, seeking connection, and perhaps even seeking redemption. Tonight, we are asked to embark on a journey, he began, his voice steady but imbued with a palpable urgency, a journey into the realm of love, where each step may unveil what we have long buried in the depths of our fears. Will you allow yourselves to witness the trial that love often presents? A low whisper of confusion swept through the assembly. What trial could love impose? Was love not the balm that healed the wounds of life? Yet the high priest pressed onward, sensing that the unpredictable nature of love was what they needed most to wrestle with. The path of love invites us to encounter our deepest selves, not just the strengths we possess but also the shadows we fear. He pointed to the young woman still holding her child, her protective embrace drawing more than just nurturing comfort. Imagine the love a mother has, where vulnerability becomes strength. Yet, what if her love is challenged, placed in a crucible by circumstances beyond her control? How does she navigate that with grace? What does she teach her child in moments of trial? The woman's gaze flickered like the wavering flames. And what if that love falters? What if my embrace isn't enough to shield my child from the world? Silence wrapped around her question, a testament to the weight it carried, the uncertainty of love's power in the face of overwhelming odds. The high priest leaned forward, drawing from a reservoir of wisdom accumulated through moments shared with the devoted and the broken. Love, he replied gently, is not merely a shield, it is also a sword, cutting away the misunderstanding, the loneliness that weighs heavily on our souls. It is in our trials that love reveals its most beautiful form. Take heart. Through pain, we learn resilience, and through endurance, we discover purpose. The elder nodded in agreement, his voice mingling with the sound of raindrops. Each trial moves us closer to the essence of our being, often urging us to confront what we would prefer to avoid. When we embrace love amid hardship, we unveil our capacity to grow beyond ourselves. We often discover, too, that love is not a solitary endeavor. In our trials, we find community. The crowd stirred, a cascade of thoughts and stories igniting among them. The high priest searched for direction in their eyes, each reflecting back the fear of vulnerability, the anxiety of the unknown. What purpose does your love serve when put to the test? He asked them ponderously. Perhaps it is not merely for ourselves but instead for the world yearning for transformation. When love confronts adversity, how does it shine its light through the cracks of despair? An older man, his weathered face a map of lived experience, spoke up, voice trembling yet resolute. I have seen love transform despair into hope. I recall when my own child was stricken by illness. In those dark times, we were lifted not just by the strength of our own love but by the outpouring of the community's support. Their acts of love became a lifeline, reminding us that love is magnified when shared. As he spoke, the rain pounded against the ground, resonating like a heartbeat. In his words, those who gathered began to see a flicker of comprehension. A trial endured together could lead to collective healing. The high priest welcomed this awakening, feeling the shift in energy wash over the crowd, sensing a glimmer of hope flowering in renewed hearts. Tonight, we stand on the brink of understanding, he declared. Trial after trial, love beckons us to look beyond what we know, to strive for a purpose larger than our fears. But as we tread this path, we must collectively ask ourselves, are we willing to embrace the discomfort that accompanies profound love? To risk everything for a glimpse of unyielding grace? And so they stood, mulling over the invitation of love cloaked in trial. The rain continued its dance, and in that moment, they recognized that within every struggle, the unyielding promise of purpose awaited, inviting them deeper into the heart of their own mysteries. Amidst the whispers of the rain and the pulsating energy in the air, a hush fell over the gathering. The high priest felt the weight of their collective breath, a silent acknowledgement of the sacred truths just beyond their grasp. They were on the precipice of understanding, yet still shrouded in fogs of uncertainty. Do you remember the story of the seed? He asked, his voice now softer, almost contemplative. A seed must break apart before it can sprout. Only through the soil's darkness can it harness the sun's light. This is love's trial, immersion in life's shadows to emerge into brilliance. The young woman with her child, still uncertain, looked into the faces that surrounded her. But what if a seed fails to grow? What if, through love's trials, it simply withers away? Is there not a risk in nurturing too deeply? Ah, the high priest responded, a spark igniting in his eyes, such is the paradox of love itself. The possibility of failure exists alongside the chance of unimaginable growth. Just as the rain nurtures the fields, love's trials are not futile but essential in cultivating resilience. The elder tightened his grip on his staff, leaning forward as if to impart a deeper wisdom. True growth requires discomfort, it requires us to surrender to the mysterious journey of life. Embracing vulnerability exposes us to joy, sorrow, and transformation, a sacred intertwining of identity. One of the younger men, emboldened by their discourse, raised his hand. What if love leads us to paths we never intended to travel? What if, through the trial, we discover a purpose that terrifies us? Laughter rippled through the assembly, laden with both humor and truth. Perhaps it is in that very terror where we find authenticity, the high priest replied, his voice melodic amidst the raindrops. Love dares us not just to exist but to thrive. Each trial is an invitation to redefine our relationship to ourselves and to one another. The gathered crowd seemed to pulse with understanding, yet uncertainty lingered like the soft rain. The high priest felt its weight, turning his attention back to the young woman. What do you fear might lay beyond your embraced love for your child? He asked gently, her brow furrowed, searching within herself for answers. I fear failing to protect them. Without love's armor, how can any of us withstand the trials awaiting us? Your profound love does possess an armor, though it may not be of metal or might, the high priest reassured her. It is forged in openness, an understanding that life's trials are not merely obstacles but teachers. True protection comes from allowing love to shape you, not guard you. The rain, now a steady rhythm, echoed a tenderness that seemed to connect every heart present. The high priest offered an invitation with his next words, an invitation to consider their role within the crucible of love. In the midst of trials, will we extend our hands to buoy each other? Will we walk together, beacons of light in the dark? The environmental elements around them, wind rustling through trees and rain pattering against the ground, felt like a chorus responding to his inquiry, blurring the lines between the sacred gathering and the nature that enveloped them. Yet, we must not forget, he continued, that while love reveals our purpose, it is often concealed in layer upon layer of trials. Will we observe and learn, or recoil in fear? Amidst this storm, what unveilings lay on the horizon? As they mulled over his words, the gathered souls reflected in silence. Each heart carried a question as heavy as stone, yet illuminated by a flicker of hope, a hope rooted not in certainty but in the profound possibility of love's unfolding. They began to sense that within every trial lay the seeds of transformative purpose. But the journey had just begun. What truths might the next trial reveal about who they truly are, and how might their collective hearts navigate the unknown paths before them? As the rain began to soften into a gentle mist, the high priest stood still, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The air was thick with anticipation, as though the very heavens were poised to offer revelations not yet whispered. Beneath the weight of shared contemplation, every heart began to pulse in time with the sacred dialogue unfolding among them. Consider this, he began anew, his voice resonating with a quiet urgency. Trials can often strip us of our facades, revealing the true essence of our spirit. Without the jagged stones upon the path, how would we know the strength of our footing? Perhaps the true question is not whether we fear trials, but what we become in their wake. The young woman drawn into the unfolding narrative nodded slowly, her gaze shifting from her child to the elder's weathered face. But if trials also bring pain, can we truly embrace them as vessels of learning? Pain is undoubtedly a companion on this journey, the high priest acknowledged, raising a hand as if to intercede the complexities of her doubt. Yet, understanding pain as a guide may illuminate the darkest corners of our hearts. In our shadows, we often find the flicker of insight, just as a candle shines brightest in the dark. That a murmuring rippled through the assembly as members exchanged looks of curiosity and recognition. The possibilities of their challenges took on an ethereal quality. It seemed that, collectively, they acknowledged a deeper truth yet to be fully explored. But what of the suffering that seems endless? Came a voice from the back, apprehension mingling with sincerity. What wisdom can we glean from pain that never wanes? Is there solace to be found, or only resignation? Resignation may be the heartsick answer of despair, the high priest replied, lifting his chin slightly. But solacea. Solace emerges when we allow suffering to sculpt our souls rather than imprison them. The alchemy of love's trials can transmute agony into resilience. Every heart, when refined by fire, can emerge as gold forged in experience. The young woman held her child a little closer, as if the words were caressing them both. But what if our trials seem to tear us apart instead of bringing clarity? What if we lose our very essence within them? Perhaps, the elder interjected, his voice steady, a revision of our understanding is in order. The essence of life is not merely to avoid suffering but to surrender to it with grace. Each trial presents a pathway to connection, not just to ourselves but amongst each other. It is within this unity that love reveals its profound wisdom. They sat with those thoughts, and a solemn acknowledgement settled over the gathering, like a blanket of hope resting over their shoulders. The rain's gentle rhythm began to subside, leaving in its wake a hush that seemed to beckon them into deeper contemplation. Let me ask you, dear companions, the high priest continued thoughtfully, what if our discomfort serves a higher purpose? What if it guides us towards a revelation about our intertwined destinies, thus transforming strife into opportunity? Can we recognize trials not as burdens, but as sacred invitations to evolve? As echoes of his question lingered in the misty air, a shift happened among them, a recognition of their collective journey, which was intertwined with every heart present, began to unfold. It was as though they sensed the tapestry of life itself, a remarkable, intricate weaving of stories touched by love yet strengthened through trials. Yet the gentle moment bristled with further uncertainty, a dawning realization that the path forward was still obscured. As new questions emerged, so too did the understanding that answers might lead them to yet more mysteries. What if the tapping at the door of their hearts led them not just to understanding pain, but towards unveiling their truest potential? And in the darkness of uncertainty, how might they choose to illuminate their way together? As night began to yield to dawn, light crept hesitantly into the court, illuminating the faces that had wrestled together through the depths of despair and hope. The rain had transformed into a renewing mist, washing away the dust of their judgments and fears. As the high priest surveyed the assemblage around him, he saw weary but awakened souls, each one illuminating in silence the truth they dared not speak until now. Friends and fellow seekers, the high priest began, his voice resonating with newfound clarity, we stand on sacred ground. The trial we witness here is not merely of this man, this emblem of love, but of our own hearts. Each of you bears the weight of a choice, to remain shackled by fear or to embrace the uncomfortable journey towards love's full manifestation. Let us hold fast to this truth: love does not shy away from trials, it embraces them, for therein lies the beauty of growth. With every word, the air crackled, humming with the unseen energy of transformation. A wave of understanding washed over the onlookers as they began recognizing their own fears and long-held beliefs, the tangled web of their hearts intertwining. A sudden awareness that they were all interconnected within this struggle for truth. The elderly man, bolstered by the rising tide of faith, spoke again. What do we understand about freedom, if it is not exercised in love's grace? What power does it hold if it isolates us instead of uniting us in understanding? We have grown accustomed to fearing the unfamiliar, the sacred demands of love, yet love invites us into its fold. It challenges us. A young woman, emboldened by her emotion, stepped forward, her child secure in her arms. But what if love's call is too heavy? What if stepping into that light means risking separation from those we hold dear? She trembled, her voice breaking with the weight of her question. It is in love's essence that we discover a worthy sacrifice, the high priest responded, his gaze steadfast. Sacrifice of our comfort zones, of our prejudices, for more expansive horizons. Love may require that we lay our very souls bare before one another. Can we not embrace the vulnerability that resides there? To love fiercely is not to lose oneself, it is to discover oneself as we align with the divine force of unity. The whispers of agreement spread through the assembly, like ripples across a pond, echoing the truth of a shared vulnerability. Fear began to unravel within their hearts, revealing new paths forward, illuminated by a promise that closure from the past was attainable. In the center of it all, Jesus stood bearing the weight of their scrutiny, yet amidst the spiritual upheaval surrounding him, he became a mirror through which they could see their own incomplete narratives, compelling them to confront their intersections of light and shadow, a crucible of authentic truth. Then, as if summoned by a silent command, the crowd began to shift. They moved closer together, hands reaching out to those beside them, a tangible connection emerging that defied the earlier turmoil. In doing so, they reflected the vibrant tapestry of humanity, woven together through both suffering and grace. Remember, the high priest continued, encouraged by the atmosphere of profound revelation. Our hearts were never meant to be isolated islands, but bridges to others. We have a choice, to let love flow through our trials, allowing it to mold us into messengers of compassion. And if we anchor ourselves in this truth, a miracle awaits. Our collective love can break chains not only for us, but for our children, our communities, our world. As heads nodded in agreement, a hush fell over the crowd as the weight of their impending choice pressed down upon them. Would they step forward together, embracing love's transformative power? Or would they retreat into the confines of fear, burdened by the past? Then, unexpectedly, one of the high priest's aides grasped the significance of the moment and shouted, "Release him! Free the innocent! The true trial ends today. No more shall we sit in judgment, we choose love over fear." And one by one, more voices followed, harmonizing in a courageous crescendo of declaration. Let love prevail. We release what binds us. We free the innocent. Stirred by the swelling call, the crowd raised their hands, entwining with one another, the air thick with a profound sense of purpose and unity. They began to chant a sacred affirmation and embracing of love that transformed the very atmosphere, compelling them to embody the principles they sought. As the power of their collective voice echoed through the court, sunlight broke through the clouds, casting radiant beams upon them, like fingers of light grounding their resolution. In that sacred marriage of spirit and flesh, something miraculous occurred. With every surge of their voice, they unleashed the chains of unseen fear, restoring the dignity of love that had long been denied. The innocent stood surrounded by affirming energy, the healing balm of truth woven into the fabric of their shared humanity. Look upon one another, the high priest beckoned, for in every gaze, see the divine, the reflection of this great and complex tapestry of life. It is not solely Jesus who stands liberated today, but all of us, taking our first steps toward grace. Every act of love, however small it may seem, reverberates into the soul of the world, morphing chaos into harmony, with renewed affection binding them together and the last vestiges of darkness receding, they embraced one another, sharing tears of joy, relief, and springing hope. In their illumination, they discovered that true purpose lay not in isolation but in the essence of community, a tapestry of love resilient against life's trials, and as they turned their gaze to the man who had silently borne their burdens, he offered a humble simile, a mirror held up to their growth. For that moment, the trial transformed into a testimony, and in the quiet aftermath, they harbored the revelation that love, despite its challenges, demands unwavering courage yet also promises reflection, connection, and the light of true purpose. In that divine convergence of hearts, they knew something monumental had shifted. What began as a trial had unveiled a truth that echoed beyond the walls of the court, a calling for life anchored in love, radical compassion, and a testament to the wondrous potential that resides within each of their hearts. And so, as the people returned to their lives, they walked not just as individuals but as a community united in their shared purpose to weave love continuously into the fabric of their days, allowing its warmth to extend far beyond Jerusalem, igniting flames in the hearts of distant lands. Thus, the final call resounded with remarkable clarity. Love, when embodied as a collective journey, carves paths through the whirlwind of trials and transforms them into beacons of hope, a grace that permeates beyond the trials of today into a blossoming tapestry stretching into eternity.